This project is a collaboration amongst the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, UCCS, Nourish Colorado, formerly known as Live Well Colorado, and the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. Through a series of 3 films, Farm to Early Care and K-12, hospitals and universities, we would like to take you on a journey around Colorado as we share success stories from institutions, farmers, and food systems change agents. This film should be viewed as a tool for you to share with your food service team, the institution's leadership, and community partners to demonstrate what is possible when institutions transition to making local food procurement the norm. We invite institutions and local partners to participate in re-establishing strong Colorado-based food value chains, recognizing that the food on our plate is the reflection of where we live. Colorado. This film is available at our UCCS website and YouTube channel playlist and can be packaged with various fact sheets, recipes, and resources to help food service teams make the transition to local food procurement in Colorado. We appreciate you taking the time and effort to integrate this film into your in-service and training. We hope we have inspired you to join us as we reshape the landscapes of institutional food. And we're here to talk about farm to institution, and the hospital obviously is an important component of this.
No matter how much exercise you do, it doesn't make up for a bad meal.
And so the question to me is whether you want industrial agriculture to feed your country, your community, or whether you want family farm agriculture. People who are stewards and husbandmen and caretakers of our natural capital and our natural resources.
Regardless of ailment, belonging somewhere, especially with food, is very healing and very powerful. And I would like to bring that into my medical career and hopefully spread that throughout the medical field, especially with MDs.
We try to use as much local as possible. It's such a small community. We really want to try to reach out and support each other, as best we can.
So within food systems, we actually have an organizational goal to help build a sustainable, equitable, and health-promoting food environment across the state of Colorado.
A lot of the care was kind of just acute, help them while they're here right now, not help them for a better life later on.
It's a strange situation that we're prescribing medicine instead of prescribing health.
And I think that's a very important environment to do that in.
Prescribe food. Food is thy medicine, and medicine is thy food.
What are the partners that actually have pretty significant purchasing power and actually have an ability to play a real leading role in shifting our food system so that communities have more access to affordable, healthy foods? But who is in a really good position to be able to do that and to leverage their purchasing power and their role in community to increase that kind of access? So it sort of got us to looking to institutions, and not just farm to school, being really inspired by farm to school, the K-12 system, and looking at from early care all the way to higher education, clearly working with our healthcare institutions and other state-run institutions as well, and saying these are, people always use that term anchor institution, right? These are institutions that are really physically anchored in community. They are, if you think about hospitals, correctional facilities, schools, these are institutions that feed and serve some of our most vulnerable populations, or populations that maybe this is where they get a good dose of their calories and have a chance to get fed healthy food in these institutions. And they're institutions that do have purchasing power. If you compare, the dollars that go into sort of the food supply chain from some of these big institutions compared to when we're talking about individual consumers with a program like Double Up Food Bucks, you start having a chance to say these are dollars that really can change the food system, that can affect that supply chain and increase access to healthy food for our students, for our patients, for our, and everyone who works in these institutions as well.
And I'm here with Karen Perry, who has shaken up the hospital system, bringing in very locally grown produce and
fresh produce, from scratch cooking, and it doesn't stop.
Well, anything that's going on in a hospital, there's the backbone of the food and the people in the kitchen who are obviously not always being front and center and being thanked for what they do. So on one side, it's a lot of work, it's not a lot of thanks, and these chefs have this brief moment then to interact with something that's so different, a truly local food item, bring that in the kitchen and actually create something. And I think they have so much talent, they have this culinary training as their background, and seeing that come out of them was just really spectacular.
I think there's just a lot of room in the field to grow and have more education on local food, how to cook local food, how to prepare it.
I think that it's critical to be incorporating the local food community and everything that local food has to offer when it comes to treating the patient as a whole person.
I think it has to be a community-centered or organizationally centered where everybody focuses on the nutrition aspect of food and how it's going to create a healthy, sustainable operation that is going to actually affect people. Well, people come in here, we get them for 3 days, we put them on a diet, and we say, this is what you need to do, but on the way out, they're stopping at McDonald's.
It wasn't teaching them about how to cook better food when they're at home. For example, if they had a heart attack, teaching them about heart-healthy foods. It wasn't really about that. It was about the in the moment, let's help them right now, not what kind of education can I give you for a better life once you leave here.
You see a lot of healthcare institutions trying to get really creative and take to heart that they are, who they are serving through their food. And it's not just, you often hear that term sort of food is medicine, but really actually adopting the approach that food is actually prevention, that food is health, that you're coming in earlier, and it's not just sort of a dose of medicine later, but how can the healthcare be as a community partner and actually a prevention partner. So, whether it's Children's Hospital in Aurora that's doing some really interesting work of growing their own food and integrating that into their food service, or other hospitals that are actually just doing more local procurement. We see a lot more healthcare institutions saying, how do I engage in this? This is actually part of our job.
And there's some hospitals that are doing like a prescription program, like where the doctors are actually taking somebody with diabetes or heart disease and telling them, I'm going to give you a prescription for 3 servings of vegetables a day, and you can fill this at the farm stand on Friday at the hospital. And I don't know, they're doing that at St. Mary Corwin's in Pueblo and a few others where...
Spanish Peaks.
Spanish Peaks, is that in Huerfano County?
Yeah, by Walsenburg.
In Walsenburg. So anyway, I've just always thought that'd be so cool to do that.
I would love to see a hospital that has on-campus access to local food and the food literacy that goes with it. How do I use this food? Why do I care? Where did it come from? I think that these are really, really important for the patient to know.
Yeah. Well, your blood pressure's looking good. Have you looked over our menu options for today?
My name is Chef Shelby. I am
Nice to meet you.
The chef and a registered dietitian here.
So what we've found is that we are trying to create menus in the cafeteria. We have a dietitian that builds the menus for patients, and then we alter that depending on which diet they're restricted at. And while patients are in, we try to get into the patient room and get them as comfortable as we can and discuss food with them and present our food in a positive light to where they're able to eat.
We have our summer classic, our ratatouille, which is filled with freshly picked Colorado tomatoes, sweet red peppers.
Let's do the ratatouille. Okay, we'll have that prepared.
And if you get to meet the farmer, it's worth it. You get to see what they do, how hard they work, and you see where your money's going, and you get to feel that love in the food when you eat it. And that's something that we don't get from like a typical supermarket.
I hope you've had a good stay here. I want to make sure that you have all the necessary tools before your discharge. So, food is medicine. And when you are consuming your red meat, we want to make sure that you're getting it from good sources. And aside from that, other great protein options are going to be things such as fish, poultry, eggs, all of which you can be getting locally sourced. And then we have some recipes printed out for you just to incorporate your whole grains into your breakfast as well as your fruit. If you look for that sticker in local grocery stores, that's how you know that it's going to be a good local source.
So this is a mobile app. I mean, so this will tell me where all the markets are?
Yeah.
What we are trying to do is able to teach patients their diet as well as show them the food, how we would prepare it, and then if they have questions and try to prepare them so when they go home that they can also replicate some of the same cooking techniques that we have done here. So we do have conversations with patients and parents to try to instill the importance of their diet.
We also have our outpatient dietitian, Jack, who's going to be working with you.
And tomorrow, we are going to plan on meeting at our hospital's farm stand and kitchen. It will involve a 2-hour session where we will prepare a meal together. I just have some recipe cards for you as well.
Perfect.
So these are going to be a lot of great, easy to prepare seasonal carbs. And then just slice in strips.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll go this way to dice it.
And I mean, the nutrition value is another whole category, but
flavor and nutrition.
Nutrition.
The challenge really is convincing people that it is worth it, and getting the education and getting their soul in it and getting their heart in their food. You know, I would love to see that. I would love to see the way we can change food in medicine and make it more about local food and bring it back to the farmer and bring the patient to the farmer or the farmer to the patient in ways more than just education, but hands-on experience.
We have a lot of caring and loving people that love food and want to help our patients, help their improvement with their health through food. So any of our local farm fresh items that come in, we try to actually make sure that the patients receive them first before our cafeteria.
And I think the moment I noticed the culture shift really occurred was when people started going out to the cafe and writing their names next to some of the farm fresh produce. So I think there was starting to become a true ownership mentality of some of the items, and it just was more exciting for me at that point, because then I realized what I was able to get started with a group of other people was taking on a life of its own, and the employees were starting to be engaged in a different way.
I think it's definitely a group effort between Farm Fresh, my cooks, and everybody wanting to get behind giving patients the best possible food that they can receive while they're here.
Yeah. The other thing that we shouldn't forget is the humanely raised animal and the meat from that environment, especially if it's 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. That meat is completely different. It's leaner. It also has more fatty acids that protect the human body, meaning that it helps in healing. So all of these things have a purpose in a hospital setting. This is where we should get the healthy plate, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I guess, the purpose of our discussion, to figure out what some of the barriers are with local purchasing in institutions.
I think there's barriers on both sides. I think for food service people in institutions, oftentimes they have demanding jobs. There's a lot to do. There's a limited number of hours in the day. If you have to adopt a whole other procurement system, or food hub versus a typical supply chain, Cisco or any other distributor, it adds work. So I think from just the sheer workload, there may be a problem, or at least a mental block when you engage a food hub. You might be going through a list that's changing often with the seasons, and so you have to pay closer attention, and there's price differences. Sometimes local food is competitive in price. The seasonality, that would be the third. And possibly fourth, depending on the institution, is the food safety readiness of the particular farmer, food hub, or cooperative. Does the institution require GAPS certification, good agricultural practices? Adequate liability insurance might be another one. That one seems to be pretty easily resolved, so I've got it kind of low on the list. And then on the agricultural side, certain farm groups not really having good comparables in the marketplace with pricing, not knowing how to set their pricing, and so sometimes they might come in really low or really high. The food safety, this has been very challenging for a lot of small farms, and now we've got a federal mandate to come into compliance with the Food Safety Modernization Act, and that has definitely been a barrier also. Software solutions, modern software solutions that make ordering easier for the customers might be a significant challenge on the agricultural side. And then lastly, and very importantly, in 2016 and 17, for example, we had an incredible number of hailstorms, and we had grasshopper plagues 2 years in a row, and that really limited the availability of local food.
So when you take projects like a garden, that's something so simple, or a greenhouse that's so simple, and connected to a hospital, it may sound like it makes a lot of sense, but the culture shift that needs to occur in those environments is really big.
It is pricier to serve this meal as opposed to something that's processed. But we do try to offset our costs. We can give meals like this and charge a little more for sugary snacks and things that aren't as healthy for you to make up the difference. If you want the junk food, you're going to have to pay a little extra. If you want to eat healthy, we're going to give it to you at cost.
I remember when this was kicked off, there seemed to be a period of time, if I could rewrite history and go back, it seemed to be a period of time where there were many opportunities to explore early in that high energy phase. So I would say if this is something that is being looked at as a farm to institution concept, like how do we expand people's consciousness of local in an environment that's heavily regulated like a hospital, if we take on something that's really grassroots, organic, community-minded, there seems to be a period there where there's a ton of inertia, a lot of interest, and I think just making sure that taking on a project like that there's plenty of investment, not only financially, but just with time and labor to really explore all these avenues. We had people from occupational therapy coming down asking if they could bring patients to walk through the greenhouse because it was a real environment that they could navigate obstacles with. So we had some of those connections happening down there at the beginning, and we also hosted a few workshops. We actually had a few people come in for, we did a few dinners down there. We would grill a few things and teach a few classes. So there were a number of really interesting things that started right at the beginning that, again, if you could rewrite history, and do it all over, it might be the case where you could find, other pathways to explore with a project like this.
one of the bigger obstacles was getting administration to understand the value and actually help to implement it. But there again, we just need buy-in from the powers that be.
I think there's a very important leadership component that needs to be in place. Very few of these institutional systems are going to self-direct probably into this kind of complex world of local food. But if there are policies and leaders that are encouraging it or mandating it, we're going to have a much better chance of success.
It'd be great to have a bunch of people get together and go to a farmer's market and then have a dinner party with the food they bought. I think that would be a great way to outreach with patients. And, you know, patients and dietitians and patients and their doctor, why not host some sort of event at the hospital featuring local food? That would be a great way to access that and a great way to include the patients and make them feel like people.
But also just the economic part of the partnership as well, you know, letting our farmers continue to grow and us benefit. We're all benefiting from it.
Let's talk a little bit more about price.
It boils down to relationships between the farmers and the buyers. If there's a direct line of regular communication between buyers and farmers, there's all kinds of little things that can be exploited on a seasonal basis. And then there's also all these number twos. Mm-hmm. And in an institutional setting, you don't need everything to look beautiful. Farmers are happy to get a certain amount of money just to, you know, to gain some value out of those number two products. We would appreciate contracts. We would love to make deals with institutions during the off season so that we can reduce some of the risk and the guesswork of growing food. We plant a lot of things on spec. When you're a diversified produce farmer, there's a certain cultural habit of planting what you like and, you know, a certain amount of guesswork. Had we partners that we could sit down with and do this in a little more organized, disciplined fashion, we could order seed according to what the market wanted. We could match the varieties to what the market wanted, and we would be much more negotiable on prices if we had a certain amount of that pre-sold. So I think there's multiple opportunities to work on the price issue, but it first requires developing relationships between buyers and producers so that there's a place for this to happen.
One thing that LiveWell can and does do as a statewide organization is convene and facilitate. And how do we even physically provide a space to bring those kind of players together and even just meet each other and just kind of figure that out? How could we do this? What are our opportunities together? And provide that sort of luxury of time and space that people may not always have or don't have the ability to kind of coordinate or orchestrate on their own.
We have everybody on staff is a skilled worker. They all can work with fresh produce and local foods and things that are different, and they can put together salad bars and from scratch meals.
We wouldn't be able to make anything like this plate, you know, without the help of Farm Fresh, you know, to getting the farmers and getting that food here. It's a process, and without those, you know, Farm Fresh in place and co-ops, you know, it makes a difference.
Makes a difference, yeah.
That's one thing that we really struggle with. A lot of people don't like change, especially when it's something we don't know about. You know, we can be educated on something and then not be willing to take the next step. And I think food is a big scary one for a lot of people.
Through food, everybody comes to the kitchen, and I've always felt the kitchen is the heart of the house, and I think we've established that here in this hospital, where once people come into the cafeteria, we try to get them as comfortable as they can. Many people will maybe eat one spoonful and that's all they're going to get down, but we want that spoonful to still be as delicious as anything they've had lately.
we can make it more cost effective to buy local and to have that community